Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep into blockchain. It's changing how we think about ownership, in the digital age. We've got a ton of research here, academic papers, encyclopedia entries, even some news articles, all about blockchain.
Yeah, it's a complex topic for sure, but it's got a really fascinating history and the potential to impact tons of industries, really almost every industry.
Absolutely. So our mission today is twofold. First, we want to build a solid understanding of what blockchain is, moving beyond just like the cryptocurrency hype.
Right.
And second, we're going to demystify NFTs
Yeah,
and how they connect to this idea of digital ownership.
exactly. By the end of this, you'll not only get the basics, but you'll be able to think critically about blockchain's potential
Okay.
and also its limitations, of course.
Okay, let's start with the fundamentals. What is blockchain really? I mean, it's often described as a digital ledger, but that doesn't quite capture, its revolutionary nature.
No.
How would you describe it?
Well, think of it this way. Imagine a spreadsheet that's duplicated thousands of times across a vast network of computers. And every single time a new transaction occurs, it's added to every copy of that spreadsheet, like simultaneously.
Okay, so it's not just one ledger. It's like a shared record across many computers.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Because the information is like spread out and constantly updated, it becomes basically impossible for anyone to tamper with it.
Right.
If you change one copy, it wouldn't match the others, and so the system would immediately flag that.
So it's like a built-in security system that prevents fraud or manipulation.
Exactly. And this is really what makes blockchain so revolutionary. It creates trust without needing a central authority, like no banks, no governments, just pure decentralized consensus.
That's such a huge departure from how things usually work. But this idea didn't just appear overnight, right?
Oh, not at all. The concept of blockchain, you can trace it back decades. As early as 1991, researchers were exploring ways to timestamp digital documents,
Oh, wow.
essentially proving, when something was created or last edited and preventing any alterations afterwards.
So the seeds were planted, like
Well-
way before Bitcoin even came along.
Yeah. But Bitcoin, which came out in 2009, that was really the pivotal moment. It was the first real-world application of blockchain technology. And it solved a problem that had plagued, all the previous attempts at digital currencies, which was the double spending problem.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the double spending problem?
Imagine trying to copy and paste a digital dollar and spend it twice. With traditional systems, this was a real risk. But blockchain prevents that by recording every single transaction on this immutable ledger. You spend a Bitcoin, it's gone.
Okay.
No copy pasting allowed.
So Bitcoin showed the world like what blockchain could do.
Exactly.
But now it's become so much more than just cryptocurrency, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The potential applications are mind-boggling, really.
Yeah.
I mean, think about supply chains. Like, imagine tracking a product's journey from when it leaves the factory to when it arrives at your doorstep, ensuring, authenticity and ethical sourcing every step of the way.
Oh, that would be huge for consumers.
Yeah.
No more worrying about counterfeit goods or like unethical labor practices hidden in these complex supply chains.
Exactly. And it goes way beyond retail. Like, healthcare is another area ripe for disruption. With blockchain, your medical records could be securely stored, giving you complete control over your own data,
Okay.
while also ensuring privacy and accuracy.
I'm starting to see how this technology goes so far beyond just like digital money. But is blockchain always the right solution? Are there downsides?
That's the key question, right? A blockchain has incredible potential, but it's super important to approach it with a critical eye. One major concern is the environmental impact,
Right.
especially for systems like Bitcoin that require massive computing power.
So the benefits like need to be weighed against the potential costs.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there are other challenges too, like just the complexity of the technology itself. Understanding blockchain, it requires a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah.
And it can be tough to wrap your head around all the technical details.
Which is why we're here.
Exactly.
So let's dive into some of those technical details.
Yeah.
We've talked about decentralization, but what other key features make blockchain unique?
Well, we touched on immutability. Once a block of information is added to the chain, it's basically impossible to alter. Think of it like carving something in stone.
That permanence is what guarantees the integrity of the information, right?
Exactly. And it's all thanks to cryptography. Each block is linked to the previous one using this unique digital fingerprint called a hash. And this intricate web of interconnected blocks, that's what makes tampering virtually impossible.
So it's like not just one lock, but a whole chain of them.
Precisely. And the final piece of the puzzle is transparency. All transactions on a public blockchain are visible to everyone on the network. This fosters a level of accountability that you just don't see in traditional systems.
So no more shady dealings behind closed doors, huh?
Right. Everything's out in the open.
That's the beauty of it. It's secure, transparent, and resilient. It really is a disruptive technology, huh?
Totally.
With far-reaching implications.
Yeah.
This is all fascinating, but I'm curious about the real-world impact. What are some tangible examples of blockchain being used today beyond just cryptocurrency?
Well, one of the most exciting areas is supply chain management.
Okay.
Like imagine you're buying a cup of coffee. With blockchain, you could actually trace the journey of those beans all the way from the farm where they were grown to your local coffee shop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can see if farmers were paid fairly, if the beans were transported sustainably, and even if, like, the roasting process met certain quality standards.
That's incredible.
It brings a new level of transparency and accountability, I think, to the whole process.
Yeah.
And it's not just coffee. Think about tracking pharmaceuticals to prevent counterfeiting.
Right.
Or ensuring the ethical sourcing of diamonds. Like, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
Wow. But, we keep talking about these public blockchains.
Yeah.
Are there other kinds?
That's a great question. There are also private blockchains,
Okay.
which are typically used by businesses for like more internal processes. Think of it kind of like a company's internal database, but with the added security and transparency of blockchain.
So it's like more controlled.
Right.
Access is limited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To authorized individuals within that organization.
So how does that impact like the idea of decentralization then?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Private blockchains, they're definitely less decentralized than public ones, for sure,
Right.
because a single entity or a group controls access and permissions. It's kind of a trade-off, though, right? You gain efficiency and control, but you sacrifice some of that openness and that immutability that we were talking about earlier with public blockchains.
It's like having a gated community versus a public park.
Yeah, I like that.
Both have their own set of rules and benefits.
Exactly. And speaking of rules, let's talk about one of the most powerful features of blockchain. Have you heard of smart contracts?
I have heard of them, but to be honest, I don't fully understand.
Okay, so smart contracts, they're basically self-executing agreements written in code that automatically enforces the terms of a contract when certain conditions are met.
Okay. That sounds kind of like science fiction.
Yeah, it's pretty futuristic.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you're renting an apartment. With a smart contract, you could set it up so that the rent payment is automatically deducted from your account on the first of every month
Okay.
and sent to the landlord. And once that payment is confirmed, like on the blockchain,
Yeah.
the digital key to the apartment would be released to you automatically.
Oh, wow. So it eliminates the need for all that paperwork.
All the back and forth.
Exactly. It makes the process much more efficient and way more secure, and it goes way beyond just rent,
Oh, okay.
Smart contracts can be used for anything from supply chain agreements to insurance claims, even complex financial transactions, really anything where you need a legally binding agreement.
So smart contracts are like having a digital lawyer built into the system.
You could say that. They bring a level of automation and trust that honestly was unimaginable before.
Okay, we've covered a lot about how blockchain works.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about its impact, like the bigger picture.
Sure.
What are some of the challenges and opportunities that you see, like, on the horizon?
That's a good question. Well, one major challenge, as we touched on before, is scalability.
Uh-huh.
Can blockchain technology handle like the massive volume of transactions needed for it to be widely adopted?
Okay, so if everyone starts using it for everything,
Right.
it could get bogged down.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Mhm.
a highway with too many cars. Everything slows down. Researchers are working on solutions, though, things like sharding, which basically breaks the blockchain into like smaller, more manageable pieces,
Okay.
and layer 2 solutions, which process transactions off of the main blockchain, all just to improve speed and efficiency.
So it's about finding ways to make the system, like, more efficient without sacrificing security or
Exactly.
decentralization.
Right. Yeah.
What about the environmental impact? We
Yeah.
talked about that a bit earlier.
That's another huge area of research and development. One solution is switching from these energy-intensive proof-of-work systems to more eco-friendly alternatives like proof of stake.
You mentioned that earlier. Remind me how that works again.
Sure. So instead of requiring, miners to solve these complex puzzles, which consumes a ton of energy, proof of stake allows users to validate transactions based on how many coins they hold.
Hmm.
It's a more democratic approach
Yeah.
and a more sustainable approach, I think.
So the more invested you are in the system,
What?
the more power you have to validate those transactions.
Exactly. And this shift towards proof of stake, it's gaining momentum for sure.
Yep.
Ethereum, the second largest blockchain platform, they actually recently transitioned to this model.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're tackling these technical challenges,
Right.
but what about the human factor?
Yeah.
How do we get people to trust and actually adopt this new technology?
I think education is key, for
Sure.
sure. The more people understand how blockchain works, the less intimidating it becomes.
Right.
It's all about breaking down those complex concepts and really showcasing, the real-world benefits.
I think that's where the excitement comes in. Once people see how blockchain can, make their lives better
Right.
through secure voting, transparent supply chains,
Yeah, yeah.
all of these things, I think they'll be more likely to embrace it.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, the power of innovation. New applications are emerging all the time, pushing the boundaries of what's even possible.
Speaking of innovation, we got to talk about DeFi,
Yes.
decentralized finance.
Decentralized finance.
This sounds like it's really turning the traditional financial system on its head.
It really is. DeFi is all about building financial services on blockchain networks, so cutting out those middlemen like banks and financial institutions.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to borrow, lend, and invest without even needing a bank account.
So it's about giving individuals more control over their finances,
Exactly.
creating a more open and accessible financial system.
I think so. And it's not just theoretical. I mean, DeFi is a rapidly growing sector with billions of dollars locked into various applications.
But like with any new technology, I imagine there are risks involved.
Of course, yeah. DeFi is still largely unregulated, so there are concerns about security, scams,
All right.
the potential for volatility for sure.
So as with any new technology, it's a balance, right?
I think so.
Between the potential for disruption and the need for responsible development,
Absolutely.
adoption.
Yeah.
Blockchain seems like it could disrupt just about every industry.
Yeah.
But before we go too far, let's go back to, the core of what makes this technology so unique, that decentralized nature.
Right. That is a fundamental aspect we should definitely explore further. The fact that blockchain isn't controlled by any single entity, that's what gives it so much of its power.
I know we've touched on this, but I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it.
Yeah.
How can a system that's spread across so many computers be more secure than a traditional, centralized system?
It seems counterintuitive, I know,
Yeah.
but it really is the opposite. Think about it like this. With a traditional system, all your data is stored in one central location, like, say, a bank's main server. And if a hacker breaches that server, they have access to everything.
Okay. So it's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. But with blockchain, the data is spread across, thousands of computers all over the world. To compromise the system, a hacker would need to control a majority of those computers, which is virtually impossible.
So it's not just the cryptography protecting each block of data.
Right.
It's also just the sheer scale and distribution of the network that makes it so secure.
Exactly. Imagine a security system with millions of guards, each protecting a tiny piece of the puzzle.
Right.
It's really tough to break through.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about the reliability of the system? What happens if, some of those computers go offline?
Well, that's another advantage of having, a distributed system.
Mm-hmm.
Even if some of the nodes in the network fail, the system continues to operate because the data is replicated across all the other nodes.
So it's like self-healing.
Exactly, like a self-healing network. No single point of failure can take the whole thing down.
Blockchain sounds almost too good to be true. But I know there must be some limitations. What are some of the challenges, that blockchain faces in really becoming mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main hurdles is scalability. As we were talking about earlier, as these networks grow and handle more transactions, they can become slower. and more expensive to use.
Like a highway that gets congested during rush hour?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so finding ways to scale blockchain without sacrificing that security or that decentralization, that's a major focus for developers right now.
And then, there's the question of regulation.
Right.
Governments are still kind of figuring out,
Yeah.
how to approach this new technology,
Absolutely.
which creates a lot of uncertainty for businesses and individuals.
Yeah, it's like navigating uncharted waters. The rules are still being written, and it's just important to stay informed about how that regulatory landscape is evolving.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about, the history of blockchain, the key features, the potential benefits,
Yeah.
and some of the challenges. But I want to bring it back to, like, the listener for a second.
Okay.
How might blockchain actually impact, our everyday lives in the years to come?
Well, we've already seen, how blockchain can be used to track products and supply chains.
Right.
And that gives consumers way more transparency and control over what they're buying.
And you mentioned the potential for, secure and transparent voting systems,
Oh, yeah.
which, would have a huge impact on democratic processes all over the world.
Absolutely. And beyond those examples, blockchain could revolutionize how we manage our digital identities, giving us more control over our personal data
That-
and how it's shared.
That's a really big deal in this age of, like, data breaches,
Huge.
online privacy concerns.
For sure.
So, and as the technology evolves, we'll probably see even more, like, innovative applications
Yeah.
emerging in areas that we haven't even thought of yet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it sounds like the future of blockchain is still being written.
It definitely is. And that's what makes it so exciting. The possibilities are vast. And the potential for positive impact is enormous.
Well, I think it's safe to say our deep dive into blockchain has given our listeners a really solid foundation
I think so too.
for understanding this, complex and transformative technology.
They've got the tools now to critically analyze the information they encounter,
Yeah.
engage in some meaningful conversations about the future of blockchain.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The blockchain revolution is still in its early stages,
It really is.
and the journey is far from over.
Definitely not.
So stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop asking questions.
Great advice.
The future is waiting to be built, one block at a time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.